how big in terms of sort of revenue and profit wise do you think a company needs to be to think about investing in a PR or marketing company and making it worthwhile? Obviously, we know you have to invest in these things to grow, but is there a kind of a rule of thumb?
I think a lot of it's down to personal choice, obviously, but in my opinion, if you're really good at doing the job that you do or running the business that you run or providing the service you do, then why would you want to waste your time doing something other than what you're expert at? You know, we all have limited time to be able to run our own businesses. And, you know, I look to experts outside of my business to help me achieve my clients' goals if we don't have the expertise in-house. It's one of those things that, you know, how is your time best spent, I guess, is the question. And I think you'll suddenly realize that if, you know, you're spending 25% of your time marketing your business and only 75% of your time actually delivering the service that makes you money, then you have to start asking yourself a question of whether or not that's the best use of your time.
Yeah, and Jojo, obviously, prior, many people may know this if they checked out your profile, but prior to doing Manors, which is probably what a lot of people in the golf industry would know you for now, you worked in sort of marketing and branding side of things as well. What's your angle on this?
I think Nicole's definitely got a really good stance in that it's about where you spend your energy throughout the day, especially as a founder. You've only got so many hours in the day. And I guess from our side, as from Manors' perspective, you know, we went at it as with the kind of forethought that if we wanted to do this properly, we wanted the best people around the table. And whilst I definitely have a great foundation, I still didn't know necessarily the answers when it came to actually deploying strategy for launching an e-commerce brand, you know, building the network within the wholesale market, you know, and the connections there. So I think that the one thing that is very, very difficult to sell from an agency side is your connection and your black book. And that for me is definitely where I found the most value from hiring agencies, and definitely the most value that I can bring, I did bring when I was on the agency side.
It's interesting. I wonder, Jojo, do you think because of your background in what you did prior to doing Manors, you understood the value of that when you were thinking about setting up what might be termed as a sort of independent brand to begin with? There's a lot of other people that are doing kind of small independent brands, whether it's clothing or other, you know, accessories or whatever within the golf industry. I wonder whether they also see that value at that early stage, or you know, they're really doing things from bootstrapping. So therefore, it's like, how can we really afford to bring in, you know, expertise in this area in the early stages? But your background maybe informed you that that's actually critical for you to do to get it right.
I think what it gave me the best insight in is that as an agency owner, you'll get lots of people knocking on your door with great ideas, but not necessarily with the capital to deploy them properly. And if they don't have the money to deploy a marketing strategy, they probably don't have the money to correctly execute on product, on social strategy, on lots of other things. So actually, people think of it as the client holds all the power, but actually, you know, good agencies will say no to brands because they don't actually believe they can do good right for them, right? And it doesn't matter if I can convince someone from the agency side, if I convince someone to spend $2,500 a month with us, but they didn't then back that up with good product, good content, then I would do a terrible job, and then in turn they'd never sign on again, and that would then be an unhappy customer. So it's like I came at it saying, well, I'm only going to hire an agency. You know, when we did hire a PR agency, we shopped around like 10, 12 different agencies, and I said, this is my budget. This is what I want to get out of it. And I was very, very direct because I knew that if I didn't give them that information, they wouldn't be able to offer this a good service.
On the same tack, but switching a little bit to talk about the collaboration kind of angle, Jojo, something that Manors, as people in the golf industry will be aware of, and it was within doing my research for this, I realised it was almost sort of 2 years to the day when you launched and then you announced the collaboration, which is quite cool in terms of a sort of PR piece. But you've had obviously this very notable collaboration with a really huge, you know, sports and clothing brand in Adidas. What do you think you did differently to achieve that collaboration that maybe a lot of other smaller businesses or independent type businesses in the golf industry have maybe not being able to do. And I think I shared this with you in advance, this question, because I was wondering, is it just a case of asking? I mean, is there maybe a lot of people that don't even think of, there might be an opportunity for those bigger, huge agencies to huge companies to actually want to collaborate with smaller partners. So what's your thoughts on that?
It's there's definitely no secret sauce, but I think what's important is applying a flag in the ground and saying very clearly, this is what we're about. So as a brand, we weren't shy about not conforming, and I think that is that in itself is quite a scary thing to do, because you go out there with your product, especially before we'd even launched. And we made it very clear that we weren't willing to conform, because we felt like we could see golf in a different way. And that wasn't because we wanted it to change and suddenly everyone had to conform to us. It was just that we felt like we could portray in a different light. So when it came around to the Adidas opportunity, I mean, again, you said it there. If you don't ask, you don't get. And we came up with a great concept that our team creatively did a really, really good job on, and we just felt like it deserved to hopefully have a bigger voice involved, because ultimately at that point in time, when we initially came up with the concept, that was a year after we launched, right? So we didn't launch this project till 2 years after, but there's a year's worth of work that goes into it. And we came up with the idea, and I just thought, let's try and make something happen here. And luckily we were able to speak to the team at Adidas, and Chris Hedman there, who his team had such a great vision. They genuinely looked at golf and said, not just we're going to do stuff to make it look like we're making an effort to change the perception, like we're actually going to put our money where the mouth is, I guess, in a way. And ultimately they also had to like the idea, which they did. So next thing you know, we cooked it up and turned that around. So I think if I was to cordialize that into a couple points, we were different enough to Adidas that made them want to make it possible to work with us, because obviously we're not looking like a direct competitor. We gave them an opportunity to activate with a different audience, potentially, to who might consume with them originally. And then ultimately the concept was a nice enough one that they liked it. And it was creative enough to kind of really show golf in a genuinely different light. And so I think that kind of merged together into something that was exciting. And then we executed on it well enough that we got people to buy into it as well.
Well, we have our first live question as well, which seems very apt. Kenny Palace, who runs the Links Diary. How do you choose who to collaborate with? Do you have any tips? Thank you for the question, Kenny. Anyone want to answer this one? Some thoughts?
First and foremost, hello, Kenny. Nice to be tuning in. Kenny's project with Links Diary is like absolutely beautiful project. We love it. I think that what I know what they're doing is a great example of where perceptions can be changed, because we're seeing golf in a editorial manner and not in what you'd see on the majority of golf club websites around the country. And I love the storytelling narrative. And I guess going into answering that question, I mean, tips on how we choose to collaborate. We've been in the fortunate position with the following up of Adidas, putting that on a lot of people's radar, to have been offered the opportunity to collaborate with people. And whilst it is incredibly, it's an amazing thing that someone wants to work with you, we're so selective. And I think that selective element is essentially a key tenet of our brand, because it's not about saying yes or no because we do or don't like what you do. It's just about saying we only want to run projects that we can actually tell narratives behind and have genuine narratives, like with The Beautiful Game, the 3 irons on the shirt. Like there was so many verticals within that collab that if you dig into that, you realize there's genuinely a story there. So the idea of coming out with something that would just be as simple as 2 brand logos together on a few polos and come buy this because it's going to sell out doesn't interest us. So we're working on trying to find brands that have stories that might not even be in golf, that we can then leverage together to create something that will actually be emotive and interesting for our customers and their customers.
Yeah, excellent. Nicole, I mean, over the years, I get the sense that you've had a lot of clients, but you've also done collaborations in many sorts of different ways. I mean, even with what you've done with recent films is a kind of, I guess, a collaboration, and what you've done with some of the media agencies in the UK as well. What would be your advice on this?
Yeah, I guess it's about thinking about your brand DNA and thinking about what that partnership would represent. I completely agree with Jojo about storytelling. Storytelling is so important in any collaboration, and it has to work both ways. You know, there has to be something, a hook within it that makes it authentic. It's all about that authenticity. And the collaborations that we've done, so in terms of the film that I'm doing, you know, when I was first approached to do the film, I said no, because I didn't think it was the right thing for me. And it wasn't at the time. It was only later down the line that I felt I could bring anything to it. So I guess from a personal point of view, I've had to look at whether or not it's something that would work for me in the long run, which it has, and it will when it's eventually shown. But it's, yeah, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into collaborations and ironing out the wrinkles. So it has to be worth that investment of time.
One more question in this sort of theme that we're looking at in terms of business growing here. Can you be niche and be successful? Adam, I'd asked this question in advance. We think maybe there seems to be this sort of feeling that you need to be able to crack all of golf. Maybe that's our perspective. Maybe it's not true, but I think we do sense that within the industry. What's your thoughts on that, Nicole?
I was thinking about the way that brands market their products, obviously, before we came and to do this chat today. And I think one of my biggest criticisms of brands in the golf industry in general is that they want to market to golfers. And they don't think about their audiences or what segment of the audience they should be targeting. And, you know, is there a particular product that fits with a different segment within their own range? They just don't segment it in the way that a marketeer would. You know, I don't like just throwing the money at golf, because golf is, even if you look at the female market, you can't just say, let's market to women who play golf. You know, I'm very different from, you know, I'm very different from the people I play with at the golf club. And, you know, we're not going to buy the same products, or, you know, I'm not a good golfer. There's no point in marketing like a really expensive putter to me, because I'm never going to buy it, because it's not going to improve my game. So I think it's, you know, it's all about segments of the market. And I do think that you can be niche and be successful. You know, I think in a way I wouldn't want certain segments of the market to be buying particular brands. You know, you look at kind of the damage that's been done over the years to brands like, you know, Burberry would be a great example in the 90s. And it became like kind of a chav staple. And it went from being this really classic kind of niche, wonderful British brand into something that, you know, the brand image was completely destroyed. And that's what happens when you go from being niche to very mainstream. And I think brands need to think really carefully about their audiences and segmenting that and who they're talking to. And that allows you to be niche and successful, I think.
You have almost perfectly led on to the next section and the next question. So thank you very much for that, Nicole. And there was no preempting about this, but let's go on then and talk about the motivators for consumers going forward into the future. And in particular, we'll call it the unknown golf market. So how does golf approach that golf audience that doesn't sit within these traditional demographics like you were talking about there? There's maybe not quite as much known about them yet. And as you say, it appears like the golf industry is finally wising up that you do need to start to think about segmenting. You know, not all women golfers are the same, as one example, but also that you can actually go into some of these niches here, and also you can test things and actually use evidence for making your decisions about things. Jojo, starting with you then, what's your thoughts on this? Like, how do we approach this audience? Because that you might say that's maybe an audience that you guys have targeted with Manors.
I think the term like targeting now is becoming a very, very loose term, in that people assume you just put an advert on Instagram or Facebook, and then you just go, right, I'll put X amount of money into this. I'd like to target this, and this person. But ultimately it doesn't produce the results at all that it used to. And it doesn't matter how sexy your brand might be, it's still very, very difficult to convert. The way that you need to approach anything now, it doesn't matter if it's golf or not, is to be brand led. And essentially you need to, which people aren't really willing to do, invest in things in the long term. People want immediate wins, and that might be fine, but the only route you can go down there is a discount, and that's a race to the bottom. And I see lots and lots of good brands who are clearly beholden to some kind of, whether it's shareholder or expectations on their own back, to revenue figures that are coming at the expense of brand sentiment. And so I think from my side, in terms of this new generation, they are the most aware generation there has ever been on this idea of like, I'm being sold something. And the only way you're going to tap into that market is through organic content, being smart on platforms like TikTok or things like that, which are obviously new. And then finally, building the trust, and that trust has been built by having a stable foundation of good content, product, and the fact that their mate told them about it, and that for them is enough to tick a box, and sell something.
Mm-hmm. I love that you called me out on that with the word target, because the word target wasn't in our question before. It came out of my mouth, and as soon as I said it, I remembered the Imagine Insights report that I read last month, and one of the things that came out of that loud and clear was Gen Z don't like to be targeted. so it's basically exactly what you've described. You've done it a lot more eloquently than I would have done, so that's a great answer. Thank you. For those who aren't too clued up on it just yet, the world of fashion, obviously the world of art, and even sports in particular are now getting hugely involved in the NFT world. Gaming itself is also going to be a big part of things going forward. Obviously, being a fashion brand, being a golfer, and having a bit of an interest in this stuff, what do you think are the opportunities that you're kind of already seeing? And I know as everyone talks about the community, it's still early, it's still extremely early, and it's a very volatile space, the crypto space. But we've already seen in the last few months the Lynx DAO project that popped up in America, seemingly, unless you can prove me wrong, I don't think there was a massive big long lead up where they were priming a huge big community. It came about extremely fast, and before you know it, you had thousands and thousands of people that were paying for a opportunity at some point down the line to help make a decision about which golf club is purchased, presumably in America, but I guess it could be anywhere in the world. So they have this huge community that are now going to test this new golf club ownership model. But it seems to me, there's obviously Bryson's had some NFTs came out last year at Bay Hill. There's chat that the PGA Tour are now really on this, and they're probably going to follow what's been happening with the NBA Top Shot and the NFL, these kind of things. Makes logical sense that we go into that. I think it's fairly obvious that some of Phil's controversial comments a month or so ago were sort of based around the fact that he suddenly realized, hold on a minute, here's the value of some of the assets. For example, famous shots that I've played over the years. A video clip of that shot could be worth X. I should really get a portion of that because it was me that played that shot, not the tour. So there's a whole massive debate that could be going on in the background on that PGA Tour level. Just from what you've learned, and I know you're not just looking at sport and NFTs, you're looking at art and projects in there. What do you think the opportunities could be for golf going forward?
Well, I think if you think about it, the way that an NFT works is, in some regards, is very similar to like a debenture you might have at a golf club. You buy in. It's a popular golf club. You pay a price which is dictated by how popular that club is and the demand, and that might be X amount of pounds. And then the club gets even more popular over the next 10 years. You decide to leave, and actually the value of your debenture might have gone up. And in that turn, that's a profitable trade, and you've also in the same time enjoyed the experience of that golf club in the last 10 years. So when it comes to NFTs, they give you a very similar experience in that you buy into something, and at any point in time, you can then liquidate that and sell out of it. But when you sell out, you lose the utility or membership that it provides. Why is it relevant? Well, I think because if something like Lynx DAO is successful, it can prove that not only did they raise $10-12 million in a very short amount of time to go and purchase a club, but they then give their membership direct ability to vote on anything, and that vote is held based on I own one membership, that's one token of vote, and they can, using the blockchain, they can verify every single vote that is made. So there's like a real level of accountability there. And it also activates people from all over the world. Like I know I don't personally own a Link Style, but I have friends in England who do. They don't live in the States, but they will one day hope to visit that club and walk in to a like-minded individual group of people, and be like, hey, I'm a member here, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think what it does is it really promotes golf into a much younger audience. It allows an element of accountability and authenticity around the space, if done correctly. And I think it's exciting. I think it shows golf in a way which people didn't probably think was possible. There's a lot more that can come out of it with the art angle and things, but I think that's still yet to be proven from a specific golf application.
Yeah. So are you planning on having a Manors Golf clothed person walking through the sandbox at some point anytime soon on the metaverse with because Adidas have done a bit of a dip into the metaverse in terms of their collaboration with the Bored Ape?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think Adidas have been best in class with a lot of what they've done on the NFT space. They're very early with it, even earlier than what you could consider now. I think that any brand would be wise to be looking into it, us included. I think that the most important thing, though, is there's more to lose than there is to gain. And right now, if you get it wrong, you could really, the backlash on your brand, it could be a very, very severe one. The upside is, you know, cash, right? But really, what's the importance of a quick sellout collection of NFTs when actually in the 6 months time, when you don't prove any of the utility you said you would, it doesn't come out, then that's going to come back to bite your brand in the ass and ultimately become more of a deterrent. So I think you have to be very cautious about how you go out and do this and not get, blindside yourself by the dollar signs, and focus on building something with genuine utility, genuine value for the long term.